Now this shot looks as if it's at Vung Tau. Alternatively, it could be the Luscombe airstrip at Nui Dat. Yes, I think it might be. Driving along the road on the southern side of it. I'm heading off to visit a platoon outpost of the reinforcement unit, and here we are, we've arrived, which is occupying a position normally occupied by the local forces, the village forces or the province forces. But for some reason, the normal occupiers had to be away doing something else, and the reinforcement unit was tasked with locating a platoon in the position to save it from being looted, I guess. And we were also an observation post for the activities against the Viet Cong dug in, or rather caved in deep caves in the Long Hai Hills, which you just saw in the background. The operation to get the enemy out of those hills was by means of dropping liquid petroleum jelly, in other words napalm, but not lit, into the mouths of the caves, and then firing rockets into the cave entrances to light the napalm which had drained down throughout the caves. This was only one of the means of attempting to get the enemy out of the Long Hai Mountains. On its arrival in South Vietnam, 8 RAR attempted this job and suffered very severe casualties in so doing. And that's one of the reasons why this sort of an effort was employed to try and winkle or blast the Viet Cong out of their caves without incurring too many of our own casualties, or any of our own casualties, if possible. That was the platoon commander, whose name, unfortunately, as I said before, I can't remember. He was an excellent, excellent lad. And here we'll see a lot of people sitting around in the sun watching the operation. Here goes a Chinook, and you can't yet see it in this shot, but they've got underslung bladders of napalm. My camera on extreme focus doesn't make for a particularly clear picture. Now, all these films of mine I was sending back to Australia to be developed, and as a result, I wasn't seeing the result of my photography, which meant that I didn't improve over time. And not only that, I've got a feeling that the exposure meter on the Canon camera wasn't working all that well. Perhaps the batteries were starting to run out, I'm not sure. And there you can see the explosion of the liquid petroleum jelly after a rocket had been fired into it. There are fighters circling around doing the firing of rockets, but they're a bit hard to catch. see here over the top of one of the local villages. One of the perimeter strong points. And this position had been dug in and with pretty strong overhead cover to resist the mortaring, which was a favourite method used by the Viet Cong against the village protection troops. Vietnamese interpreter, I suspect. Now you'll be able to see in this shot the bladders underslung from the Chinook. And whether they drop them one at a time or all at once, I don't really know. And I don't think we'll get to see. This could... these aircraft could be observation aircraft directing the whole operation, probably from a bird dog type observation aircraft. We were as equally mystified by the details or the exact details of what was going on in those days, looking at it from a distance as I am now, trying to work out what was happening in detail. Looks a bit like Surfers Paradise here. But the bunkers and the kit wasn't far away. One of the big problems of these static positions was infestation by rats and other animals that you didn't necessarily need to have living with you. Right, looks like I'm on my way back from my visit to that location now in the Land Rover. By this time, whereas on my first tour of duty in 66, 67, there was no way you could drive around in a single vehicle through all these villages and throughout the countryside anywhere. By 1970-71, Phuoc Tuy province generally had been cleared of any major forces, and the local Viet Cong forces were very cautious about making any attack on us, because they knew that we had a fairly big capacity to react. And therefore you could drive around in a single Land Rover quite happily, and you'd be very unlucky to come to any mischief.